aboard!
Hey, what's up, everybody? You're listening to Cannabis Karaoke, where we ask you to grab the mic and tell your story. Get inside info from today's most interesting cannabis pioneers, and from the first note to the end of the song, listen up as you get to hear the stories of success on Cannabis Karaoke. All right, so we have a guest in the studio. I'm horrible at introductions, so I'm going to go ahead and let her introduce herself.
What's up? I am Jocelyn. Good to see you, Danny.
Just Jocelyn?
Just Jocelyn. Jocelyn Sheltraw.
Oh,
it's my last name.
You gave last names. I wasn't thinking last names. I was just thinking like you would say you're, but you're just like, what's one name rapper person? Beyonce. I'm Beyonce.
There you go.
You're just Jocelyn.
Or Jossie
But you're
Bossy.
a little bit more than that. Thank you for showing up. I happened to see you were in town, and you were just literally right around the corner.
Just around the corner.
And I was like, hey, you want to come in and get on the podcast? And you were like, absolutely. So I really appreciate that. Just a little background on what this is. Cannabis Karaoke, to me, is this industry is a lot of bad singing, like karaoke is. And so I'm a bad singer in this space. I'm learning. I'm getting beat up every day. It's a really hard industry. And so you've been on fire. You've been definitely, how would you say, advocate? What's the word that you would give yourself?
Yeah, advocate, I suppose. Yeah.
What makes
I'm
you,
there.
why, because we met a little over maybe a year ago.
I've been in the industry for a year this month.
But you seem so natural at it.
Well, I'm a passionate enthusiast for many, many years. But I guess to answer your question, I feel like I can contribute a lot because I spent 10 years working in ad tech, and I just really have this like natural knack for kind of business and operational efficiency, but I'm also like kind of hippie at heart. And so I merged like the corporate world with this just like creative, free-spirited person. And so I think that lends itself really well to cannabis. And so I'd like to think that I'm bringing a lot of like professionalism here, but keeping the cannabis culture as we all want it to stay for any of us true enthusiasts.
Just recently, you did a little tour through the Bay Area with one of your coworkers, and I saw that you were in Oakland. What were you doing there? What was that all about?
So I got involved with the social equity program in Oakland, and so that is through the Alliance and Make Green Go. And what they're doing is providing technical assistance to social equity applicants. So this is primarily, manufacturers, cultivators, distributors, and retailers. And just for some context on social equity, though I think it's pretty common for most people to understand this program today, but just for further context, so women and minorities have been most affected by cannabis infractions, and it's harder for them to raise money, right? It's like
hard to get licenses and just overall, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so to start a business today, if you're going to start a retail shop, I mean, I think they're saying you need anywhere from like $500,000 upwards of $3 million just to go through the entire licensing process and be compliant. So it's very capital upfront intensive, and therefore that's a lot harder for women and minorities to raise capital. So it really then kind of cuts them out of being able to compete. And so we then don't have a level playing field. So I believe it's really important in California to make sure that we have diversity and diversity within businesses, diversity within business owners. And so the initiative of the social equity program is to give support and resources to all of these applicants so that they can compete on this level playing field with the rest of the corporations that are able to be successful.
That is, I know Oakland's a big proponent of that. I know LA's having some things. The next batch of licenses are going to be social equity-based licenses, correct?
That's right. Yeah, Oakland was the first program in California to get off the ground. So all these other cities are sort of looking at Oakland to see, how they're modeling the program and how it's working.
There is a dispensary in Oakland, I think Cannabis.
Right.
That guy's a really cool dude. I've talked to him a few times.
And I think they've committed to a certain percentage of their shop being social equity brands.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So there's a lot
What
of
a new
neat
concept. Imagine if we did every industry like that to help level the playing field. Most people would say that's socialistic maybe, or socialism at work and business, because capitalism is, pull yourself up by the bootstraps and, regardless of your race or your gender, you have, there is no unfair advantage in most people's eyes, right? Mm-hmm. Wouldn't you say?
I suppose.
In business, like most people don't really, they're not trying to help each other out. They're usually trying to see how much money they can make.
I mean, the same thing is still happening within social equity, right? There's always loopholes. And this is one of the most interesting learnings, only being a year into the industry. There's always loopholes, right? So like with social equity, general applicants can pair up with social equity applicants. So in Oakland specifically, they have this part of the program in which they say a general applicant can give the social equity applicant 1,000 square feet of space, and then they can team up together. So then the general applicant gets,
But there's never going to
front
be
of
a
licensing.
sunset on that, right? There's never going to be like someone can't trick somebody into a social equity play with them and then
Well, they partner.
remove them, right?
I mean,
Could
yes,
they?
of course.
Oh,
That
wow.
always happens in business. So,
But isn't there some requirement on that license that they would have to?
yeah, exactly. Like there are certain requirements, so I don't know how, kicking them out entirely, I don't know, but there's always loopholes.
Sure.
I mean, and in the cannabis industry, there's always ways to get around things.
So I know you say that you've only been in a year, but you've been a cannabis user, right?
Oh yeah. I mean,
Your whole life?
it's, kind of part of my family DNA, grew up around it. I've been a consumer myself started in high school on and off throughout my whole life, but I'd say, for the last 10 years, much bigger part of my life. It was a daily part of my life for probably 5 years. And then like 6 months ago, I was just like, I don't know, like I was getting kind of like a little cloudy and like mentally foggy. And I just noticed I was like slurred speech. Like I like flower. And so,
Flower's getting potent.
I think so. I was just at a few shops and there was like 32% THC strains.
Never
I bought
would
one
have
of
thought
them.
that. Did you? Do you remember what you got?
I don't remember. From actually a local Santa Cruz. I just posted about it. I'll
You can
I'll
look
look it
in
up
a
after.
second.
But
We
anyways,
got some good weed in Santa Cruz.
absolutely. Coastal Sun Farms.
Yeah.
Got some of their stuff, so I'm excited to try that. But yeah, so I decided like 6 months ago, I was like, okay, well, now I'm gonna like cut back and just consume primarily when it comes to like creative pursuits. So I like to jam and then play like anytime I want to get into a creative space. But I've really tried to like cut back from just like, after work and then just smoking all night long.
Right. So when you were in the ad tech space, every time I run into you and every time we have an event together or whatever, you're definitely full of energy and stoked, super, I don't want to offend you, type A, passion, like go, go, go. Did you feel like after like being in the ad tech space and then coming into cannabis, what made you, that's a big step, right? Like at least when I came into the cannabis space and changed the ever LinkedIn profile to what I was doing, I got instant messaged and like people saying, "What are you doing? You're blowing it. You're never going to get a job again in the normal space." Did you have any of those concerns when you left your job to come into cannabis?
No, but so many people were like, well, aren't you concerned? And I'm like, huh? Like, I just like am that kind of person. I just like decide I'm going to do something and then I just do it. So how I got into cannabis, so like a year plus ago, I don't know. I'd been in tech for 10 years and I was just like bored. Quite honestly, I wasn't really learning.
No
and
challenge.
So, yeah. Right? And having been like, this, anyone who knew me in tech, I kind of had a little reputation. Like I always was the one bringing weed to the party. Always. And I always had a pen on me. So just everyone kind of knew. So it wasn't like a surprise that I got into this by any means. And I was very involved in the tech world as well. So like people knew that that's what I was doing. So I just never thought like, oh no, it's going to affect my career in any way, like negatively. But so for me, I decided to take 4 months off after leaving tech. And I just did all of these things to just kind of figure out who I was. And then I had met the founder of our company a couple years ago through a connection in tech. And I like really respected Leafly. So like Headset was started by the founders of Leafly. And, being like this longtime enthusiast, that was the first way you could understand what a strain was like and what a high was like. So I just really respected what they did. And being in the tech world, like, I liked the user interface and the whole experience. So I just followed along the Headset journey. And then, we just waited for the right time and they were ready to launch California. And so then I just like, the stars had just all aligned for me to get into this industry, but I also wanted it. I was conscious that I wanted it. And then it just kind of like, I put it out there and it just happened. Like,
but you went from ad tech to data. Mm-hmm. How did that happen? Because that's like usually two different sets of people.
Yeah, but I came from the mobile world. So I started working in mobile the year of the iPhone. And so it was the same trajectory, like really high growth, new industry. So there's so many parallels between it and tech. So it's the same type of, I think the same kind of type of person, like a bit of a risk taker, someone who likes like new industries, emerging industries. So it just sort of was a natural.
What's a bit entrepreneurial, even though you're necessarily not working just for yourself. I feel that in the space a lot.
Yes.
That what we get to do and what we get to pioneer, is definitely on the entrepreneurial, because there's a lot of pain.
And I had my own company before I started an app when, during that 10-year period. And so, yeah, it feels very much the same. It's just not my company, but it's the same.
But you still have the same
thing.
passion for it. And I
Yes.
think that goes for most of the people that I've interacted with at Headset are very passionate about, data is a dirty word in cannabis. Two dirty words in cannabis are science and data. Why is that, you
Don't
think?
I know? Because it's scary. Because look at the conversation just in our society today with Facebook and Google.
Sure.
And so we already have this perception around it just and fear of it just because of that. But then when you add in like cannabis, something that's like federally illegal and still very stigmatized, it's just not an easy conversation to have. But it's so important because data helps, like it literally shapes the future of your business. Like with cannabis, it's like if you don't know what people are buying and who is buying, how do you know what products to make? A lot of entrepreneurs or a lot of cultivators or manufacturers, they're making products based off gut decisions.
Right.
I like this strain. I like this tincture, whatever it may be. And it's like, that is great, but to run an effective business, you have to understand what's happening in the market and who the consumer is. And so that's what we're providing. We're providing them this knowledge. And so, yeah, data is scary, but it's not. It's here to it's scary if you're not looking at it because you won't be around.
Well, it's scary if you're in denial.
Yes.
I think that's why people are like less apt to embrace data, because people do want to have, I don't want to say that guru approach to what they buy for their customers, but they think they know what their customers want. And that's not uncommon with entrepreneurs and small retail, which is what mostly cannabis spaces are. Most of these stores are run by mom and pops, and more stores are being, conglomerated, and you get bigger MSOs or whatever coming in the space, multi-state operators, but they just think they know better. And
a lot of ego.
You just, I guess ego, but maybe just thinking that they're smarter than the intelligence. I think people are always surprised at, when they look at their data and go, oh my gosh, we sold more edibles this month than we actually sold this brand. Because we are still in the beginning stages of the branding component of these companies. Talk a little bit about, well, I don't want to go too far into data, but I do want to talk a little bit more about branding and data to support brands' decisions on what to do. And then I want to talk a little bit more about your improv stuff and some of the stuff that you do for fun, and then get back to a little bit of the advocacy and how the listeners can help support that. So talk a little bit about how brands, it's evident with Headset on, the data business intelligence tool, why it benefits a dispensary. But how is it helping the brands? And I know there's some obvious answers, but I'll let you take it from there.
Okay, well, let me take a step back and explain how we get the data, because that's what the brands are wanting. So how we get the data is by hooking in with point-of-sale systems within dispensaries. So we're aggregating all of this data, we're anomalizing it, and then we're reporting on these market-level trends. So we can see in real time what people are buying, and oftentimes who's buying if there's a loyalty program associated with that dispensary. So anyone in the industry, but specifically brands, are wanting to know, what does the category breakdown look like? So what's happening in California? So for example, right now, flower is making up like mid 30%.
Sure.
The vape market is almost on par with that. And so when we know that, and then when we can look and see how many brands are in market, so if there's almost 300 distinct flower brands in California. So how do you then compete with 300 other brands when you don't have cannabis companies can't advertise like normal consumer packaged goods companies can, right? Like you can't use any digital media. You can, but very limited. You can't use Facebook or Instagram
Sure.
or Google. So they have to build these brands and then compete with 600 or 300 other distinct companies and try to, figure out how they're going to get shelf space essentially. So what the data that we're providing and how we help the brands is just by helping them understand that landscape. Who are the top brands? Who are their competitors? How many new products are coming onto market, in a daily, monthly, weekly, whatever basis?
It is a hard connective tissue between the brand and the customer and the dispensary. One of the rare ways that you can advertise is Cannabis Club TV does tell that story, but we work directly with Headset as well to drive menu boards and just to really solve that educational issue inside the dispensary. Do you ever see like the headset data being forward facing to consumers, like where consumers are going to start looking at that stuff, or are you primarily still just B2B in that space?
Well, we're B2B, but we produce a lot of reports based off of all that data. So we'll do like really interesting analysis that consumers are definitely interested in. I post a lot on like social media and sharing a lot of these like data points, and most of the people that are hitting me up are not in the industry, and they're like,
Sure.
"Oh my god, this is so interesting." So reporting on trends like, well, what are women consuming versus men? How are senior citizens? Because that's a fast growing market. So how are senior citizens consuming? And so looking at a lot of these demographics and these different groups and their patterns, I think is interesting for anyone, whether you're in the industry or not.
I think it is a rare chance to be in something that's so volatile. I mean, just from our side of the business, we look at there's probably better than a half a dozen market pressures that exist specifically to cannabis, from packaging regulations, testing regulations, commodity availability or overabundance, pricing being set by competitive brands. What is a consumer? What category are you could go, oh man, I'm going to produce all this tincture because last quarter I did really good, and then like be stuck with it. And then there really is no shelf appeal yet. There's a few brands that are kind of bubbling up to the top, but for the most part, there's still a lot of fighting to be done amongst these brands for consumer eyeballs. And most of the consumers that walk into the dispensary are completely devoid of High Times, Cup, Wiz Khalifa's Instagram, or going into a specific reggae event or something that they're going to have to participate. These are what I would consider normal everyday people walking into a dispensary, and that data that you're getting off of that normal everyday person exists outside of the weed head that we know already. It reminds me of the surf industry a little bit, like surfers versus non-surfers. Non-surfers were still customers, but they just didn't drink the Kool-Aid that the surfers did. Not too long ago, you were in a what'd you call it exactly?
My improv.
Improv, but there was what was the name of the show that you guys did?
Oh, we did a little show at End Games in San Francisco.
Nice, but you did that over a couple week period, right?
So I did this 7-week course. So I've been doing a lot more public speaking for work, and I did that in my last industry as well. But I take the information that I'm trying to educate the market on very, very seriously, and so I realize a lot of it comes through the presentation of it, because as you said, data is a scary word, so I have to make it sound really cool and interesting, which it is.
I love data, by the way.
Me too. But I wanted to improve within my public speaking skills. And so I was like, well, improv seems like that would be a good way to do that. And this mostly comes because a lot of feedback that I was getting when I would do these presentations is like, you need to smile more. And so, or your personality when you're on stage doesn't match when I meet you. And it is kind of true. But the thing is, I'm talking about data. It's a very serious subject, and there's very little room for like, I have to report it very factually. And
yeah, but did I, there is an awareness that something like an improv transaction would help you have, so that you can be aware, like, am I smiling? Mm-hmm. Is my posture good? Am I making eye contact? Have I said 400 times? Like, those are all things that people forget about when they go to, like, I know a lot of people that speak really well and go do things, but then sometimes their body language or other component, like, you need coaching sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. And being able to think on your feet, like, that's and paying attention. Okay, this is one of the most important lessons I learned in improv. And this is kind of like a kick. I'm on this, like, I'm very into spirituality. And so presence in particular, I think, is a life-changing concept. So with improv, you have to be present. You have to be listening to what the other person is saying, because you're playing off each other. So if you are not there in the moment and like paying attention to that person, you've messed up the entire flow, the entire scene. So it trained my brain to really be in the moment. And so that affects then how I work with people, everyone I interact with, because I'm just here with you.
Sure. And intent, right? Like,
exactly.
You're doing it with intent. No, improv is something, I mean, I never went through the improv process. I did radio for a number of years on a morning show, which was borderline improv because it was unscripted and just current events and zinging, wing, 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 back and forth real quick. And if you got, a text, or, you looked at anything, or you checked out for a minute and something got sent to you, it's like hits you in the face and slides down the front of you, and then everyone's just kind of looking at you like, where were you right now? You know,
That's
what
right.
was are you going to do that again, or is that just a one-time episode for you?
Um, I would like to do it again, but I have a lot of things I like to do, and I really like acquiring new skills. And so I tend to try a lot of things and then go deep once I figure out what I like. So I enjoyed it. It pushed my boundaries for sure. But I'm going to focus on some other hobbies for now.
What in the cannabis space in the year that you've been in, which probably feels like 5 years. I know how May just went by, and I can't believe that May went by that fast. What's the biggest change you saw coming from when you stepped into the space and to where we're at now with regards to brands, product, data? Like, how do you see things going? Like, what are your thoughts on the space?
A couple of like things come to mind when it comes to consumer and product trends. The growth of the vape market. I feel like I'm always talking about this, but it's been surprising to me how quickly that's growing, and also non-inhalable formats. That's not surprising, but tinctures, sublinguals, topicals, any of them, like probably medical reasons. There's a lot of growth within those categories, but what's really interesting is that there's not a whole lot of competition yet. So let's look at tinctures, for example. It's a very small percentage of the market overall sales. I think it's like under 5%, but the growth there it's just happening at like significant rates. There's like 30 brands in California that are competing within that category. So that's a real area of opportunity and growth when we look at like the growth rates and some of those, even though it makes up a small percentage of sales overall.
Would you say that category is specific to people that are more medicinally treating than trying to get high per se?
That's an assumption I'm making, but it also depends on like I'm seeing a lot of tincture brands start to educate consumers that you can use this as a droplet in a drink, in a beer,
Sure.
if you want to consume
Mocktails,
socially, right? And
right?
so there's other ways now, or reasons that people are going to want to consume a tincture. So yes, I think it primarily is probably medical reasons, but I think as we start looking at evolution within those products and how people are consuming them, it will be, recreational will be a significant
Probably a
portion.
horrible example, but it's like the Red Bull, right? Like Red Bull started off as a mix and then became an energy drink on the back end. So I see the same thing with tinctures. Probably we just did some ads with I think Humboldt Apothecary did. If I may be wrong, I hope not, but they did a mocktail where they were doing their tinctures and their mocktails, and I think for me, I think I've been in this space a little bit longer, but really explosive growth in the last year, specific to California. I I too am surprised at the categories and how they elevate themselves and new things. I mean, there's literally, I couldn't rattle off on top of my head, but there's got to be over 50 different categories of product that is
There's
available.
there's 11 in California. So
11 different products.
yeah, like categories, at least as we define them. So flower, pre-roll, beverage, capsule, tincture, topical, vape, edible.
Right. So like maybe top, but then you start
But then
getting,
there's segments within
yeah,
those
mixtures
categories.
of
Exactly.
CBD, THC driven
Yeah.
stuff. And then that almost divides everything in two. And then you have, at least for us, the non endemic stuff, which is service based businesses, lawyers, insurance agents, real estate agents that are all kind of, there's so many facets to this industry that the flower itself is like a kaleidoscope, but then you have all these other businesses around it. Even more important as to why data is kind of super important to tie in so that people can, because there's otherwise you're just kind of grabbing in the air to try to figure out what you're going to be doing.
Yeah.
Tell me some of the I already know that you're. If I was to ask the next question, which I'll ask after this one, like, what do you see as being potential hurdles for certain things within the space that maybe people are in denial of that the data is speaking to? Like, is it flower pricing that's going to get slammed here due to overabundance? Like, what is the data telling us that maybe people aren't paying attention to?
Um, I think probably the biggest thing that I see that people, I don't know if it's that they're not paying attention to, but kind of like we were talking about earlier, it's like a gut feeling like this is a really unique strain, or I'm going to make, flour because I love flour. And it's like, that's great, but it's the most saturated of all the categories. So I just see people not having an understanding. They think there's something unique about it without understanding like what the actual market looks like. And that could be said for every category. But I think just because flower is like the largest category, it has the most competition. I'm still seeing a lot of, cultivators. There's so much growth that's going to come from it. So I understand the perspective, but the data can actually like tell you what is really happening. So I guess my overall point, I just don't see people looking at it. They just don't understand that this information is available.
Sure. Well, I mean, like the category of tincture. If you want to get in the space, like it seems like there's not a lot of dilution there. And I do believe that you are going to see a category like that shoot up. Do you guys track, I'm sure you are, but like as we start to know more about CBD and CBG and CBN, talk to me a little bit about what that is showing up on the data. Like, is the education component catching up fast enough with the product that's being released to help drive some of these categories that are coming out? Because if you know, like I know, like every time I see Level or another brand that has got the CBG or the CBN out there, I'm like, I will take 2, please, because A, they're hard to find, and B, they work. I mean, you want to talk about anti-anxiety or sleep or whatever, like those are 2 really good components. As new verticals,
and the terpenes. I mean, that's
right?
what I
Okay,
think is
that's
like
where I'm going.
most like that's I think the buzziest thing right now, or the thing I'm most interested in that I probably know least about, but I've been trying to educate myself. I think it's terpenes. I'm really excited that the conversation is shifting away from just indica or sativa or a specific strain, because what really does matter is that, at least as I'm finding, it really does come down to those terpenes. They're essentially the essential oils that are in cannabis, and when we're combining or when you're using different compounds within these terpenes, it can have very, very different effects. And so when you can combine, I don't know how many different terpenes there are, but there's like, limonene and linalool.
There's a
lot of them. So when you combine different ones, it can have different effects, and it can affect different people differently. So I'm excited that the conversation is shifting from an indica is going to make me really tired and a sativa gives me energy, when that's just not really the
It's
reality.
not always the case.
Right.
Like for me, I mean, we had to experiment back in the day. Like you lock into a strain when you're younger, at least I did, where you're like, all right, I'm really fond of Gorilla Glue. That does well for me. I do great yard work. Everything goes well. But for somebody else, it's not so much. Or I can't tell you how many times people say, this is fire, testing it, whatever. And then you smoke it, you're like, nothing really happened. I do believe it is 100% terpene related, because your body takes in that experience differently. Every person has a different experience. I know there's a couple companies out there that are trying to understand how to genetically map their whatever people's cannabis choices to their DNA to best have that effect. I do feel like people are trying to cheat a little bit though with the blending and we are getting a little far out there, in addition to like, because you're gonna have some diehard people that are like strain and category, like it's got to be an indica this, and that's how we're always gonna speak to it. Then you have the total other side where it's like relax, play, creative. And that works for people. For most people, that blend actually does work. So
that's the beautiful thing about cannabis, is there's something for everyone. And that's why that's why when we're looking at all these trends and like the category breakdowns, it's like we have to keep in mind, this is new for a lot of people.
It's so
right?
new.
And so people are just curious and they want to try new things. And so I think ultimately what's going to happen is like, that's what's happening right now. People want to try new shit, and ultimately like they'll come back to whatever it is that they decide on, but they're going to try a bunch of different things and figure out what works for them. And that's what that's the approach I think you have to have, especially when it comes to flower and testing different strains. Arguably any product, especially for a medical reason, like it's not a one size fits all. You have to try different things and see what works for you.
No, absolutely. And I think in addition, I do believe that I look at the cannabis space as kind of like a pH scale. There's on one end, there's the science component, right? Where people, marinol and different things that aren't necessarily, that are, I don't want to say synthetic, but they're synthesized out of the plant, that people like my family, my parents, would probably be more comfortable being prescribed marinol from a doctor versus going into a dispensary and getting a tincture or buying an edible or buying something that's a little more normal. So you do have that like weird, like not weird, just random outside subset of medicinal style stuff that's going to come out of big pharma, right? And then you have the next subset of people, which are, I want to be relaxed. They're not even connoisseurs per se. They just know that it works for them and they want to get a certain feeling out of it. And then the next batch, the biggest batch, I feel, are people that are going to be like, well, I'm going to try this and I'm going to try that, and not be afraid of, whatever's going to happen. I mean, definitely, thank goodness we're focusing on microdosing a little bit. I remember a couple years ago when you would take something like, oh, it's just 100 milligrams or whatever, and then you're just off in the corner, in your own little world because you ate a 100 milligram edible, and you're just, sometimes you need to,
Kurova, what?
you just need to be chilling when you're doing that. You can couch lock galore on that one. You go to a lot of shows.
I go to a lot of shows, pretty much every weekend.
It's almost like being a rock star. It's what I got told by Durbin yesterday. He's like, it's similar to being in the rock industry or whatever, and to being on tour, because we literally are going from state to state to state. At least our businesses, and I know Headset operates in how many states?
So
Washington.
We're headquartered in Washington and Seattle, right? And so we're reporting, like we're providing the trends on California, Colorado, Washington, and Nevada, soon to be Canada. But we'll flip it on once we're at a certain penetration point within the dispensaries, then we can turn that state on. So we're providing our software for the retail shops, the dispensaries. We provide that in any state that's legalized.
What? How many shows do you go to in a month, do you think?
Like cannabis
related
shows.
It doesn't even have to be cannabis specific. It can just be cannabis related.
I mean, so probably averaging like 2 meetups a week. It's a lot of like networking and a lot of getting to know the community. And I do 2 a week because I want to be involved in the community. So it's a lot of extra efforts, like the social equity stuff, or this my own little meetup that I'm trying to get going. I just believe it's really important to connect the community, to be sharing information, because that's how we're going to mature the industry and keep the culture as it is.
And we can keep a lid on it, if you will, too, because fortunately, there's definitely subsets of people, but fortunately, it hasn't gotten corrupted yet. Like, we haven't manipulated it for pure greed.
Well,
yeah, I feel like there's players that are, there's people that are, but people like yourself who genuinely want to help educate people and genuinely can keep putting the word out there. I think the more people that do that, the more soldiers we have in that space, the better we can combat people just trying to pull the wool over people's eyes.
I mean, one person can make a difference. Actually,
in this space, I believe it, 100%.
100%. And this week was such beautiful proof of that. Like yesterday, Oakland decriminalizing psilocybin and ethogenic plants. So basically, magic mushrooms and peyote, it was all decriminalized in Oakland. A lot of these efforts came from, there's like individuals that we can call out that helped move these initiatives forward. So one person really can make a difference in this industry. And so the more people we have that are fighting the good fight and bringing in like diverse skill sets, then the better we all are. And I feel that I can do that. And that's why I go to 2 events a week and just try to be involved.
Do you have an event coming up?
Several events coming up. And Headset, we're always putting on events, like educational events, because we're the only company that has access to this information in real time. There are other companies that can provide different types of data, but at the scale that we have, it's really incredible what we're doing. And so I'm just really passionate about sharing that information. So we put on a lot of events to educate the community, and then we sponsor a lot of events all around California. So yeah, basically every big cannabis event, like you'll see me at or someone from our team at. But this month, like UCBA down in LA will be at, their policy summit, and some of the smaller events like Grass Post down there. But we're, putting on more and more events up in NorCal.
Do you guys have anything online where people can find where you're at, or they just follow you on social media?
Yeah, social media, probably for the events, like either our Headset account or my account. But we should update our website and put some events on there.
It's hard. I'll be honest with you. We have a weekly meeting here in our company, all hands, and we list all the events that we're aware of. And it's like, it's good because there are so many people that are trying to get involved and try to understand. But at the same time, it's, we saw each other at Hall of Flowers, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. That's my favorite.
Crazy show.
Oh my gosh, I know.
But who would have thought?
Well, yeah. I went last year, and it was crazy seeing it, like how much bigger it was this year.
I was
it
at
was
NCIA
3 halls.
instead. Yeah.
Yeah. Crazy. But I mean, you know better than anyone. It's like to be interacting with like especially all the dispensary owners, you have to be at these like
Yeah.
events or meeting them in person because they're not answering their emails and phones. And so to like, get in touch with them, it's like you really got to be involved in the community. And there's a lot of credibility that they want to know that you're not just coming in from the outside and trying to capitalize on this, right? So you also have to build a lot of trust.
Does that mean are you trying to say you got to smoke some weed with them?
Well, no, I'm not saying that, but yes, please, I will. I'm just kidding.
But I do believe I have had people,
Oh yeah, so
I
many meetings are cannabis consuming meetings.
I've had meetings where I've literally looked at the person and gone, dude, would so and so come and smoke a joint with you right now? Or you know what I mean? And so I think there is that component too. I think we finally are at a place where what an awesome opportunity to take a plant, and as it's extending into other areas like Oakland's transaction, legalizing mushrooms and the like, I really think we're on a movement here that, it's been proven. If you look at other countries, right, you look at Italy and how they interact with wine and alcohol around children, and it's not a do as I say, do as I say, not as I do, where it is in the States, right? We are this big celibacy component of like, don't drink, don't smoke, don't do this, don't do that. But then everybody that's telling you not to do it is doing it. And we've been just gripped by big pharma for the last, good 25, 30 years, I think, where we've really been inebriated with these commercials on TV around take this pill to help you when you take this pill, to take you when you help this pill. Go travel around other countries. First of all, you can walk into any pharmacy almost anywhere in the world and get what you need without having to have like a referral or some big deductible, number one. And number two, the medicinal community in these other areas are not picking on, I feel like we've been picked apart by our medical system. I think we've created a lot of our own ailments, both in the way we grow food and do everything else. Cannabis is just I feel like this bulldozer of love that's just going to come through and get things corrected with people. I mean, it's just the day that I thought John Boehner would sit on a board, and granted, people aren't really fond of the fact that he's on acreage and he's doing that, but we need people like that to come up. We need conversions.
Well, we need diversity to help the industry grow, for sure. I think the cannabis industry is, yes, it's filled with so much love, as you say. And I think a lot of people are attracted to it because it's community based. Like you feel a part of something. That's personally why I like smoking flower and not having an edible. It's like the sharing and partaking in it. And so I think it attracts a lot of people that are kind of spiritual in a sense or understand that part of it, whether they can recognize it or not. Like it's just something you feel. You feel you're a part of something when you're in cannabis.
That is strange. It's like no matter where I'm at in a cannabis event, people are always handing, it's
Right.
not like, hey, get high. It's like, hey, you want some? It's like
Right.
sharing, you know what I mean? And it's not, you don't see that in other, no one walks up and gives you a drink or a beer. I mean, you probably
Right.
wouldn't take it if you did. But there is I always have felt like there is something to, the primal situation of sitting down and smoking a joint, rolling a joint, passing it around, doing bong hits, just the whole. I mean, some people just sit and wake and bake all day, but for the people that function, there's this weird interaction of like, hey, we're family almost. Like, hey, I'm going to share mine with you, and you're going to share yours with me.
That's right. That's why it's so important that we retain that culture and that it doesn't become just fully this like matured consumer packaged goods industry. We have to fight to keep that culture. And that's why the diversity is so important. We have to keep it in mind now because we're at, in California,
Ground zero.
this is year 2, right? So we're ground zero. Like we're just now born. Like we don't even know what this is going to be yet. And so look how quickly it's growing. Like within this 2 years, or this year, look how much we see like consolidation within tech companies. We see a lot of brand consolidation. Last year, I think we had 800 distinct brands. Now we're at 600 in California. So within a 1 year period, we're seeing, 200 less brands in market. So that's going to continue as the industry matures.
How many dispensaries right now? Do you know that number offhand?
In California that are licensed. So the BCC has issued 654 licenses, I believe.
And how many are open and active? Do you know?
I mean, I think I would assume
all those are open. I've heard numbers of under 500 that are actually open and operational. There's a lot of people still holding licenses that they've
Oh,
not
yeah, I'm sure that's the
transacted.
case.
But even still,
And then the unlicensed shops, holy moly,
well,
we're what,
yeah,
80%? I think it's reported in
it's
California, 80% black market.
yeah. I mean, it's crazy down in LA. I mean, you can be in a legal dispensary and right across the street is a trap house like selling. But look, when Prop 215 was around and they went to before it went to 64, we had like 3-4 times the amount of dispensaries we have right now.
Yeah. Well, it's really unfortunate actually because this week, AB 1356, I think was the bill, or SB 1356, didn't pass.
Right,
And
the
so what
1-to-1 or whatever,
the 1 to 4. So in any
or 1 to
city
4.
that had voted for Prop 64, they would give one license to every 4 liquor stores. And unfortunately, this bill didn't pass, and it's on a 2-year waiting period. So, when there's some of these cities with like one licensed shop in those cities, that's a huge problem when people are
Well, and
trying
you're
to get.
definitely stacking it. It messes with the laws of economics because all of a sudden that person's the only outpost.
Well, and it fuels the black market because
Yes.
then there are still going to be the shops that are unlicensed, and taxes, like the consumers, I don't think they often know if it's a licensed or unlicensed shop. And so, but they do know that they're going to pay 50% more when they're going to a licensed shop.
And
So
some of those unlicensed shops still take people's money as if they're paying taxes, and they just don't pay the taxes.
yeah, I'm sure.
Oh, what was it? Temecula or Chula Vista that just closed a bunch. I think it was Temecula. They just went in and closed everything down just whoosh, in one fell swoop. And so, think about how many liquor stores. You don't really think about it. Count the ones that are around you. Like where I live, I have 3 liquor stores within a 10-minute radius to me. I have 1 cannabis dispensary. We live in a little mountain area, so it's not a big deal. But like on Mission alone, right here in Santa Cruz, we probably have 4 or 5 liquor stores. And then not even counting like the fact that it's sold in grocery stores and so everything else. I still think cannabis deserves to be in its own. I don't want to ever see it so normalized like Canada's doing it, where it's like in pharmacies, or where the way Florida's doing it, where it's like you just buy indica, sativa, or hybrid. I want to still see that. I don't want to say connoisseur, but that more diverse offering than just, oh yeah, you can buy beer. You know what I mean? There's the beer wall. It's like I
I
don't ever
think
want it to get
California
there.
will stay that way. I think it's our history here. It's like, California has such a deep cannabis history. And I think if we look at like the craft brew industry, people care about like craft producers, especially now more than ever. So I think I think that will be okay here.
Let me ask you another question based on the data. I know we said we weren't going to talk about it. It's so dang interesting to talk about. Categorically, like, do you see like people beginning, you go into a dispensary and from flower to CBD, right? There's a lot of ground to cover.
The average dispensary has 1,000 product SKUs.
But I mean, that's if I learned anything in business, it's like you find your niche and then you explode on it, right? Do you see people opening? I mean, it's already starting to happen with CBD only stores, right? We just had 2 stores open up in Wisconsin that we're going to be doing. But do you see like vape store only opening? Do you see people opening flower only
Totally.
stores?
If it's a brand, so like Dosis just opened their shop on Abbot Kinney in Venice.
Oh, wow.
So it's a beautiful, beautiful shop.
And that's going to be 100% dosist.
Yeah, exactly. So, will it be just one category specific? I don't know. Maybe if they build a brand around it, why not? I think that's
I think
great.
you see, places like that specialize in certain alcohols, or cigar shops, like they're just cigars. Like I feel like those are some of the things that are going to come down the line that are going to impact the amount of licenses that get distributed. How many do you think the state of California is going to eventually allow?
I have no idea, and it's so hard keeping track of what's going on in California because we don't know like when the next licensing round will open up. There's just so many unknowns, so I have no idea.
So what's coming up? What's coming up on the radar for you? What's the next big event? I did kind of try to tease it out of you, but I know aren't you doing a panel somewhere? Isn't our
I'm
buddy,
like, oh, I'm always doing
isn't our buddy
panels.
Jeremy on a panel
Oh, yeah. So on June 27th, that's right. Yes,
in San
Jeremy,
Francisco,
what up?
right?
Yeah. So Parents Conference. It's put on by Parents Conference, and so it's called the Emerging Cannabis Trends Conference. And this is for attorneys and lawyers and insurance brokers and any more of the business side trying to understand what's happening in cannabis. So I'm going to be presenting like 10-minute overview of what's happening in California in terms of categories and product, brand, consumer trends. And then we're going to dive a little bit deeper into the vape category. So we've got Luna Stour from Jetty Extracts going to be on there as well, kind of talking about what she's seeing in the market. Rico from Canna Gather, who everyone knows. You got to have Rico on here. And then Jeremy. And so we're just going to kind of dive deep into the vape market. So that'll be in San Francisco on June 27th.
Where at?
That'll be at, I think, the Hyatt Hotel or Hilton.
The Hilton downtown?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so.
And where could they do a quick shout out so they can find that? Because I'm going to get this out before then.
Yeah, that's so that one's called the Parents Conference, PERRINS. And so, yeah, again, like that's mostly geared towards like lawyers and attorneys, people who are new into the industry and wanting to understand what's happening within
I'll
cannabis.
include it in the blog when we post it up. I'll include a link
great.
out to the blog and so people can come check it out. That's
More
where you
so,
and
I
I met,
think-
actually, was through a panel.
That is where we met. That's right, in San Francisco.
In that cute little bar. What was that bar's name?
That Tupelo.
Tupelo. That was a rad little spot. I thought that was a fun panel we did.
That was my first panel in cannabis and probably one of the most fun.
The lady that did Ease, what was her name again?
Rosa. Actually, she just called me.
She's working with...
Rosa went over to Eel River Organics. Yeah.
Yep. I had a talk with her, and she's like, your name sounds so familiar. And I'm all, yours too. And then we were like, I'm all, what have you done in this space? Because this is all I've done, right? So she's like, oh, I used to work with Ease. I'm all, I remember now. I paneled with you, and I was a moderator.
She literally just called me an hour ago. So
what's she up to?
I don't know. We've been playing phone tag. I'm going to call her after this and tell her about this.
So what should people be looking for as we close this up? I'm going to ask for some shout outs and some social media handles, but what should people be looking forward to in cannabis coming out in the next, let's say, 2 quarters? Like, what do you see happening? Can you even speak to that?
Well, the next 2 quarters it's all about policy and regulation. So I think from the dispensary, cultivation, manufacturing side, I mean, they're trying to get their annual permits right now and just be compliant. So it's all about compliance. But whether you're on the consumer side or brand side or dispensary side, and you're just curious about what's happening in the industry, I would advise anyone to check out Headset's website because we produce a lot of these reports for free. We do these really easy to read analysis on the industry, and it's like anyone could understand it. So we make data sound very interesting and fun, and it is. But so I'd advise anyone to check out our website and get access to like all these free reports.
And then what's the next show that people can catch you at? I mean, I know MJ Biz is coming up in December, but that's quite some ways away. Are you doing the NCI show in San Jose?
I'm not, because I'm going to be climbing Kilimanjaro.
Oh, look at you.
I know.
How did you not bring that up? Can we spend a couple moments on that?
Yeah. I'm in training.
So
for that right now.
first tell me where you're going to be next. Where's the next show you're going to be?
So I'm going to be the next show I'm going to be is in LA. I'm going to be doing a road show down there. And so there's several different like events that'll be at down there. So the UCBA Policy Summit, Grass Post, and then just all around LA meeting with different people. And then the Parents Conference will be the week after that. And then I'm off to Kilimanjaro shortly after that. And then it's like wine and weed and a bunch of other events after that.
Tell me a little bit about Kilimanjaro. What is that on your bucket list? I love you because you have so many bucket list things.
I know.
And you're just like, shita, 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 just checking them off as you go.
I know. I'm so crazy. Actually, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So I've been wanting to do Kilimanjaro for a couple years now. I've had some friends who have done it. And, it's obviously a great accomplishment in one's lifetime to be able to do this. And so I love pushing my boundaries and seeing what I'm made of. And so I love hiking, and I'm really into the outdoors. So, I just thought it would be a great thing. So I mentioned it to my folks, and my dad and I are going to he's doing it with me.
Wow,
and
how
so
cool.
we're doing an 8-day trail, and we're going to be summiting on his 65th birthday, and it's a full moon. So
Wow.
It's like a once in a lifetime opportunity. And then my mom's meeting us out there, and we're doing a safari after. And so it's
How are you training for that?
I'm training walking around San Francisco.
Just the hills?
I live in Nob Hill, and I live right at the top of the hill, so it's like the perfect training ground.
So you just walk up and down hills, basically?
I walk every day, yes.
And how does cannabis play a role in your training?
So I used to consume and then work out. I do a lot of Bikram yoga. I'm really into that. But then there was one day that I didn't consume before working out, and I was like, oh shit, like I can be so much more like stronger and more focused. Like I'm not going to consume before doing that anymore. So I consume it, like I'll bring a joint with me and then I'll puff throughout the walk. But when I'm training, I'm just trying to be really focused on training.
Do you use any CBDs or anything for recovery when you're feeling sore, or what is your
I don't,
what is your
because
post?
I don't really feel sore. I'm a pretty healthy person. I don't need cannabis or CBD or anything. I don't need it. I enjoy it.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you're a pretty proactive girl. You're on the ground all the time.
All the time.
All the time. You're constantly moving. What are your social media handles to follow?
Instagram, I'm Jocy Bossy, JOCYBOSSY. And then on Facebook, Jocelyn Sheltraw, and LinkedIn, just, my name.
Find you on LinkedIn. Yeah. And then what is Headset? What's the easiest way to get a Headset?
And then Headset, so headset.io is our website, or headsetio.com is our website. And then Instagram is just headset.io.
And if you want to learn data, you want to talk to somebody that really knows what's going on, and you're going to a show and you happen to walk by a Headset booth, make sure you stop in and say hi to Jocelyn, one of the hardest working women in the business by far and away. I'm always blown away by, or I should say never surprised when I see your Instagram and I'm like, damn. Like she's just bouncing around, and this is a crazy space to be able to exist in, for sure. Well, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, Danny.
I really appreciate it. I'm glad we were able to make that happen, and have fun and be well.
Thank you.
That's a wrap. Thank you for listening to this edition of Cannabis Karaoke, another kick-ass podcast about all things cannabis. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, and our website, cannabiskaraoke.tv. And if you or someone you know would like to be on the show, please hit the book your interview button on the right. Cannabis Karaoke. Grab the mic and tell your story. Wow.